Hello everybody, I'm Nora Burrows. Today we're gonna do a little fidget blanket making. So in the last episode we made a lot of pieces for the fidget blanket, but one of the things we made were these fabric squares out of teeny tiny pieces of fabric. But I think these can be better. So I have some ideas to make them feel more interesting, look more interesting, be a little more wild and crazy. So let's get started. So we made 5 of these blocks in the last episode. So we have these 2, which I'm going to keep together. This is the one that I used some blue thread on that I wasn't crazy about. So I'm going to put these 2 aside. We are going to use those, but we're going to use them in a different way. And what I'm going to do, I want to sew these 3 together here. They just kind of happen to end up being the same length. And so I'll have one long piece of fabric. It is now sewn together in one long piece, and what I'd like to do is to go and put this in the washer and dryer so that a bunch of the edges get a little bit more frayed. This just came out of the dryer, and it's interesting. It certainly got a little more tattered, which is what I had hoped for. I just gave this a press, and I am loving this. I think it looks awesome. I'm still going to continue to trim some of the little straggling threads, but I like the straggling threads, like especially like right here where all these like threads kind of come together. My thought for this now is I have this bright orange fabric. What I think could be cool is to sew this scraggly piece of fabric onto this clean, crisp, orange background. What I think is especially cool is in the background, these perfect squares, which is very opposite of this very not so perfect top. Because I want to leave these scraggly edges. I think it's, part of what's so cool about it. So I'm going to just top stitch right on top of this. I attached the fabric to the orange fabric here. I think that's looking nice. And next what I'd like to do, I cut these strips of this pretty floral fabric that I actually got from my aunt from the leftover baby quilt she did. And I want to attach these as borders to this. So it'll end up looking something like this. Then what I'd like to do is, crazy as it seems, let me scooch this down. I want to take this orange or this kind of mustard yellow corduroy fabric that I've had for a little while. I love this fabric and I really want to make a full corduroy quilt out of this and some other corduroy colors. I just haven't found the other corduroy colors yet, but so I've been hanging on to this to do that. But I thought it would be really cool to do a really thick border of the corduroy all the way around as another layer of trim, an extra border or sashing. I don't know how this is going to turn out. I've actually never used corduroy fabric before, so I don't know how easy it is to sew with, but no time like the present. Let's give it a try and see how it goes. I love that this has so much texture to it, so I think that could be really cool. So I'm going to consider this piece of the fidget blanket done. I'm really very happy with it. The corduroy was much easier to sew with than I had feared. I really like this corduroy. I definitely want to do a full corduroy quilt in the future. I'm going to be keeping my eye out for some lavender, corduroy colors, navy, gray. I think that kind of color scheme would be really cool. So look for that in the future. And then what I was thinking is, I think I won't do this, but you could. These were the blocks that I made in episode 1, some of them, and you could kind of use them as cornerstones. The colors are right, and that looks kind of cool, but I think I'm not going to do that. I think I'm going to leave it like this. So what can we do with these? I'm asking that kind of seriously because I've been all over the place in terms of what I think I want to do with these. And I think I'm going to go back just to my original idea, which is I want to make just some like tabs, I think, for the blanket. And you might be wondering what that means, and I'm not really sure. So I think I just want to start cutting these into smaller pieces. So let's try that. I'm really kind of just messing around here. I don't really have a plan, to be honest. Let's just see what happens if we cut this. All right. And now what I'm thinking is, if we cut this into some pieces, let's try and cut this into 3 pieces. Okay, so here we have a tab. And I have some ideas. This could be cool. So those are nice sizes. I like these. Let's see if we can do that again. So here are all my pieces. Some are bigger than others. Look at how those shreds all came together there. And I didn't like the blue stitching before, but here it looks super awesome. So now what are we going to do with these? I created this bias tape and I backed each one of these tiles with yellow polka dot fabric. So what I'm thinking is I'll put each one of the tiles inside the bias tape. And I think I have too many tiles to have the right number, but that's okay. So I'll fill these up with tiles. And then what I'm thinking is I'll put the whole thing on top of a piece of this blue polka dot. So it'll look kind of like this. And then I'll sew it down. And then I can either just leave it like that, or I could put a border around the whole thing. I think it leaves me better options if I don't put a border on yet. I can always add that later when I'm ready to attach it to something. But this is what I'm thinking now. And then I think I'll have some leftover ones. I could even like attach a couple, just sew them all the way down. But so this will just be sewn right across here. So part of the fidget aspect is that you'll be able to kind of flap all of these around. I'd probably want these a little closer. They'd probably be spaced more like this. And they'll all kind of just flap, but they'll be nice and secured across the top. I finished these. So this was the bias tape that I had stuck these flaps into. And then once I stuck it into the flaps, I just sewed it directly onto this kind of cobalt blue fabric. I know I said that I was going to sew it onto the navy polka dot fabric, but it just blended too much. So I thought this was a little bit nicer of a pop. And then tucked in the tape into, it's called tape, bias tape, but it's not actually sticky tape, but just tucked it right into the sides here. So I sewed these right sides together and then flipped them out and made 2 of these. So overall, I'm really happy with how things came out on these fidget pieces today. I love these little tabs here. You can just kind of play with them. Very fidgety, flip them up and down. Even this polka dot line here has some texture to it. So I think that's really cool, and I think they look really neat too. And then this piece is just beautiful. I love this. This is like one of my favorite things I've made in a long time. As usual, I'll lay these all out, take some pictures. I also ended up with a few extra little bits. So I will put these little bits into the basket that I'm kind of accumulating all of these fidget squares and pieces into, that will eventually start piecing those together and eventually hopefully have a blanket. So stay tuned for the next fidget blanket episode. We're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep doing interesting things with fabric, experimenting, and subscribe so you don't miss any of that. And I'll see you next time. Bye.